And now, after all of these years of silence and concealment, Jesus Dominguez has learned his fate. And we are going to get to that in just a minute. But to break down what we've heard so far, I want to bring on Colorado criminal defense attorney Jeff Wolf. Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time. Appreciate it. It's good to see you. Why would prosecutors agree to a plea deal for Dominguez, right? Given what we're talking about here, given the severity of this situation.
Well, my understanding, I actually know the defense attorney for the mom in the case, and my understanding is the reason they did it is they gave him a sweetheart deal because they didn't have much of a case. And so they needed to get information from somebody, and he was the one who was willing to talk. And so he got a deal because he was willing to talk, even though they weren't able to confirm much of what he told them. And they got a continuance outside of speedy trial on the mom's trial to try and confirm some of the stuff he told them. That's why they gave him this deal,
Well,
because he was the only one
what
willing
do
to
you
talk.
mean they didn't have that much? I mean, you have two dead children in circumstances where it seems, Dominguez and Minjarez are the only ones responsible, no?
Well, they didn't have any firsthand accounts. They had circumstances where they were the ones in charge of the kids, but nobody really knew what caused it. They didn't have a firsthand account to present to a jury. And so they wanted somebody to present that. And so they went to both sides and made this offer, and he was the one that jumped.
Let me ask you a question. With these kids found in these very specific conditions, it wouldn't have been enough. You don't think they would have had enough to convince a jury that both of them are responsible for killing these kids?
If it would have been enough, Jesse, why would they have given him this deal? This
Well,
was
that's what
something
I'm
where
curious
they could
about.
have.
Yeah.
Right. They could have gone to trial with both of them as co-defendants sitting in the same courtroom, but instead what they chose to do was cut a deal with this guy. They gave him, like you said, a sweetheart deal. 32 years he ends up serving versus life.
And I guess, look, I think the issue is right, since the autopsies couldn't determine the exact causes of death, that is a challenge in proving, let's say, first degree murder, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Maybe they don't get the conviction that they wanted to get a life sentence out of somebody here. So they made a deal with the devil. It's exactly what they did.
How much weight does a jury usually give to testimony from a co-defendant who took a plea bargain? I think in every time we've seen it, and anytime we've covered a trial here on Law and Crime, it's, you have something to gain by testifying against my client. What were you offered? What were you promised? What are you looking at? Right? I mean, how much does a jury weigh that?
Well, I think it depends on the type of case, right? When you're talking about the father of the children who is taking some culpability and being involved in what happened and in the cover up of it, it to a jury that seems more believable. And obviously it does, given the verdict that they came back with here in this case. And so it's not, I don't think, apples to apples to compare every single case and say, just because somebody is a co-defendant in a case, they're going to sell out and lie to a jury because they're given a good deal. I think a jury is going to look at the circumstances, and when they see a father come in and say, I am very sorry for what happened to my children, and my conscience has gotten the better of me, and that is going to give the testimony a little bit more credence to a jury, like it seems to have done here. Whether it should have, who knows?
Just to be clear, could Dominguez have faced the death penalty or life without parole if he hadn't agreed to cooperate?
There is no death penalty in the state of Colorado. That has been abolished. So no, he could not have faced the death penalty, but LWOP or life without parole, yes, he could have faced that without cooperation.
Yeah. By the way, what role do charges like abuse of a corpse or theft of government benefits, what part do those play in strengthening the prosecution's overall case?
I don't know that it strengthens the overall case when it comes to, you're looking at the death of small children. I think that it makes it harder to, walk somebody out of a courtroom completely, innocent and just say, hey, you're going home. It makes it harder as a defense attorney to think you're just going to completely skate on a case. But I don't think it involves, are you going to walk on the main charge? I don't think that it affects that part of it.
And to be clear, you had mentioned this. On September 13th, a judge sentenced Jesus Dominguez to 32 years in state prison. Couple of questions here. Any chance that Dominguez gets out before that? And if not, this is not a picnic, 32 years in state prison, but it's different than life in prison, right? So how should we be thinking about whether or not justice was served with 32 years?
Well, justice definitely was not served with 32 years based on my intimate knowledge of the case. But I will tell you that 32 years is definitely not going to be 32 years. Colorado recently had a ballot measure up for the voters that made certain crimes eligible for more time than they used to be. We used to early parole on a case like this at about 60 to 75%. Now you're looking at serving more like 75 to 80% of the sentence, but he'll definitely be out before 32 years with good behavior assumed.
Yeah, what are those factors? What do we mean by good behavior, or I don't know, repenting for what happened? What are the factors that get someone out?
It's a bit of a moving target. It's run by time computation at the Department of Corrections in Colorado, and they will constantly say that there is no set amount of things you can do to make sure that your number goes down or up. They'll say that, and they say you can't rely on your attorney's advice, you cannot rely on the words of the court of how much time you're actually going to serve. But the general factors that go into it are, number one, the actual term good behavior. Do you get in trouble while you're in there? Do you get in fights? Are you, caught with contraband, things like that? Actual behavior while you're in custody. Do you take part in educational programs? Do you, if you don't have a diploma, do you get your GED while you're in there? Things like that. Are you a trustee status? Are you, doing your job while you're in there and getting good marks from, your CO and your warden and things like that while you're in there?
What is the message you think this sentence sends to the public about the roles people play, about plea deals in severe child abuse cases? What do you think the message is?
I think the message is get to be the one that talks to the DA's office first. Tell your lawyer if you're willing to flip because you'll get the better deal. And I think that, it sends a very, very dangerous message about when you have two people caring for children, that they're not going to be held to the same level of culpability if the DA's office believes that they need help from one of them, at least. And I think that the DA's office down in Pueblo County sent a very, very dangerous message to the people of the state of Colorado when they made this deal.
I appreciate you saying that. Do you think that they would have gotten a conviction against Menarez without him?
Hard to know. I think that the defense in the case would say that it would have been a lot harder. I think that there were things that he said that couldn't be confirmed by the DA's office. I think that the case was tried outside of speedy trial as a result of working with him, which is a, guaranteed appeal that's coming in her case. Who knows what the result of that is going to be with the Colorado Supreme Court and some of the rulings they hand down. But it's hard to know what the effect of his actual testimony was. It's a very emotional case. It's a very gruesome case, but absolutely having somebody who can say, this is what happened, I witnessed it, made their case significantly stronger.
I hate to ask this, but I think it's important to as we wrap this up. I look at a case like this and I say, there are details that are now going to stick with me, that it's going to be very hard to forget, that are very specific. And this is somebody, I cover a lot of child abuse cases, child death cases here on Sidebar. In your experience, maybe in Colorado, maybe looking elsewhere, do you see a lot of egregious cases of child death and concealment like this?
I mean, we had the Watts case up in northern Colorado, the other side of the state, that was just as bad as this one. Uh, you know, it's not something that is unfortunately as rare as I think people would like it to be. I think there are probably cases we've never heard of because there are probably, unfortunately, victims that are in places that haven't been discovered and family members who haven't made phone calls like the grandmother in this case did. So I think I don't want to say ultra common. I'm not one of those people that uses scare tactics on people, but I think it happens.
Jeff Wolf, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
That is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram or X. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.